Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Fantasy Fiends show. I am your host. Now, Stevie Collier is usually the one who says this, so I was actually tempted to introduce myself as Stevie Collier. But then there's like the big name down here that disproves that. So you know me. I'm Andy Peliquin. Welcome to the Fantasy Fiends show. Tonight, Stevie will not be joining us, sadly. He just messaged me. He's been having some tooth stuff that's been bothering him for the last couple of weeks. So he's in a lot of pain, curling up, whimpering like a little girl like Stevie typically does. So he might end up in the ER to get it taken care of. Hopefully by next week, he'll be back to his normal bubbly self. But I'm still here, and joining me is my super awesome guest, PD Alleva or Alleva?
Alleva.
Alleva. All right. Where is that name from?
Where is it from? Well, it's Italian, number one. Number two, there is a Italian deli in New York City. That's Alleva. Kind of like old family or whatever. And then other than that, Aleve, the medication, just adding up. Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of, which is why I had to ask.
Understood.
I actually really like finding the origin of names, because writing in both sci-fi and fantasy, you have to think about where names came from and then how they evolved over time. So it's always sort of an interesting experiment. Like my name means like pauper, like someone who's super poor, which is kind of a shitty last name to have, but it is what it is.
Let's call it a reverse nickname.
Exactly.
Right? The reverse name.
Rashun, Stevie is not in the ER yet. He might pop out to the hospital to get his tooth taken care of. He's in a lot of pain right now. Fingers crossed that everything goes well. He'll get whatever cap or root canal or, face removal that he needed to make it all better. And he'll be back to himself next week. But as usual,
right.
Yeah, he's he's a tough little kid.
Gotcha.
To start the show, PD, or I'm just going to call you Paul, if that's all right.
That's perfectly fine with me.
That's what I assume the P stands for, just like D stands for Denise. So, it'll be easier to call you Paul.
That's
Paul,
fine, man.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your books.
All right, so PD Alleva, or Paul Alleva. I write sci-fi and horror books. I have 6 published books. I just launched a new series, dystopian sci-fi called The Rose. Other than that, I've published books that are psych thrillers, dark fantasy, dark fiction, even a family saga, and also a nonfiction book. So I'm also a hypnotist and behavioral therapist, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. My wife and I have a private practice currently, and we teach a lot of like science of mind type of philosophy, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, of course the hypnosis as well, and we specialize in trauma and addiction.
Wow, that is super fascinating. Now, if Stevie was here, he was absolutely ask, can everybody be hypnotized? Like how prevalent is the ability to be hypnotized?
Everyone can be hypnotized. So,
okay.
But it's not, when we do hypnosis, the way we do hypnosis, it's not like your classic, you're watching this string or whatever, this watch, and then you're going into this, complete hypnotic state. It's not the way we do it. It's more, we're using imagery to relay a message and to process information in the brain. So what happens with the way your brain processes information, goes from one hemisphere to the next, back and forth, goes to your subconscious mind for later use. But with a traumatic event, that event gets stuck in one part of the brain and doesn't get processed. So think about somebody who experiences a trauma, and let's say a trigger is a yellow bus, for argument's sake. So they see a yellow bus and the mind thinks that the trauma is happening, so it acts accordingly. Think panic attacks, anxiety, depression, acting out, using, stuff like that. So what we're doing with hypnosis is allowing that to be processed back and forth. So if we see a yellow bus, the mind doesn't think that the trauma is happening anymore. It's been processed. It's in the past.
That's fascinating.
Highly effective too. Really good stuff. Really good.
That's actually been a sort of an area of interest for me, is just all that cognitive, neurological, psychological thing. I discovered that I had Asperger's syndrome about 6 years ago. And that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole into the psychology of the characters and dealing with all these things. And so the series I'm writing right now has addiction at like very front and center. And so it's always interesting to talk to people who actually know, on both sides of the thing. But so this book that we're talking about tonight it's called Rose or The Rose?
The Rose, which is actually It's an alchemy practice. It's used by alchemists. It's a meditation that's used by alchemists for protection from, say, like people would be like energy vampires. You know, when you walk into a room and you feel like your energy is being tapped, right? That's an energy vampire. So this alchemy practice is to protect you from energy vampires. And that's where I got it from.
Interesting.
Right,
now
I upped it. Go ahead.
I have to ask, have you seen What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show?
I've seen like 2 episodes.
Okay, because that version of the energy vampire is the greatest addition to the show from the original movie, and I loved that because it's something that they are everywhere. These kind of people who are just like an energy drain on you, and you don't really realize it.
No, you don't. You don't. Usually, what's funny is I'll be in with like a patient, or I'll be out somewhere, and I'll feel that I'm there's an energy vampire around, and if you do this like meditation, this practice, you actually feel better. It's like pushing their energy away from you and filling yourself with good energy on your own. It's a great practice. Works. Highly effective.
And that's fascinating. A question from the audience: how far back can hypnosis help with?
All the way to pretty much like birth or being in the womb. And if you believe in past lives, we could even go there too. That's really a different story.
The brain stores memories from that far back.
Correct, because we could say the child is in there, right? So the child's in the womb, and say there's something wrong with the mother. The mother's experiencing abuse, so the mother is kind of transferring those emotional circuits over to the baby as well. So, and then being born is traumatic as well. Think about getting squeezed out of that hole. That's traumatic in and of itself. And some people go through a birth that's has issues and complications with it as well. So we're kind of like taking that on into the mind. It's one of the first things that we experience in such a case.
Wow.
We kind of take that with us throughout life as well. So as far back as the mind can go.
Very, very interesting. Well, I'm super excited if we're going to get around to talking about that. We'll hopefully we'll have some time for it. But as we like to do, we start the show with something positive to talk about something cool that happened in the last week or two. Do you have something, Paul, or do you want me to go first?
You can definitely go first.
All right. So I will go first. Let's see. Good things that have happened. Monday, I started work on Cerberus Book 12, the last book in the series, and I have 6 weeks, I think, either 6 or 7 weeks until the Christmas cutoff. I'm going snowboarding on Tuesday, the 22nd of December. So that's the last day. I want to, make sure that Monday, the 21st, is my last day of work before the holidays. So if all goes well, I'm still on track to finish that one. It's the final book, wrapping up the series. All the plot threads got to be interwoven together. So far, I'm on chapter 9, and it's been working out okay. So if all goes well, I should have it done by early December and finish up the edits on the other books. In other awesome news, on Monday, I started recording Bound in Death by Angel Hayes. This is a short story that will be included in an upcoming anthology that the Indie Fantasy Addicts group is putting together. I think it's going to come out in early December. So for people who pick up the anthology, I think the idea was to have that audiobook short story as sort of bonus content that you can get, when you download it, like a link included in the back for it or something. And I have been having so much fun recording it. Today I got to record the voices. Like I did the narrative on Monday, and today I did all the voices. And I got to do the voice in his head like an Emperor Palpatine, but just like a little bit crazier, and it was so much fun to do. Like I had so much fun recording that voice. So now comes the tricky part of doing all the editing and getting rid of all the the breaths and the weird sounds and making sure that everything is balanced. I have never actually done this before, so I'm kind of just faking my way through it all. Thankfully, my dad is a professional musician who does stuff like this, editing and mixing and all of that for a living. So once I've done as much as I can, then I'll sort of talk to him and say, okay, what else do I need to do? But it's been a ton of fun doing the recording, the technical stuff less so, but it's possible that I might do this a little bit more because it's been so much fun. So that's kind of my good news for the week. It's, low key good news, but I'm stoked. What about you, Paul?
Nice. Well, a couple of things that we're on that route. So, all right. So, The Rose is my 6th published book. All right, but it's the first book I've ever actually marketed. All right, and the fact that we made #1 as a new release. I woke up the morning that it came out and it was already a #1 new release. That was amazing.
That is
I
awesome.
absolutely loved it. And then on the flip side, I'm just about to finish a book that I've been working on all year. It's been about 8 months, about 150,000 words. It's a horror novel called Jiggly Spot and the Zero Intellect. And I just like broke into it and just rounding it out. All I got to do is just finish more or less the last chapter, but it's done. And finally, I'm satisfied with it. It's been one hell of a journey.
That is pretty awesome. Finishing a book is definitely a great feeling. It's so weird. I am like, this is book number 37 that I'm working on right now, and it still feels as awesome as it did the time, the time that I finished book 5 or something. Finishing book 1 is like, your first blast of whatever super strong drug is awesome, right?
That's right.
It's a feeling that you kind of keep chasing, but then it's still a pretty awesome feeling to sort of like exhale and know that you don't have any more story that you've got to work all together, that everything fit nicely and everything kind of worked out in the end. So it feels amazing to finish a story, especially a big boy, like 150,000 words. That's intense.
Yeah, it's a monster. It definitely is. And those characters gave me so much trouble. It's been like 8 months. It's just been a labor of love. It's like my COVID quarantine novel,
Wow.
So everything is in there, pulled out all the stops. Didn't hold anything back. You just let the imagination go, let all the demons out of the head, let them run around. And they had a very good time. So it's good to know that it's done. I can't wait to get into the editing process with Jiggly Spot, because I have another horror novel coming out next year that I'm currently editing. So Jiggly Spot I'm putting on back burner, leaving it alone for months, probably about another 3 or 6 months, and then I'll get back to it and start all that editing. I really just that's where the real magic happens. But I love editing. So
me too.
Yeah, it's definitely good.
It's actually one of my favorite parts of the process, because it's like you've done something and then you've had people look at it and they tell you that it's wrong or that it could be better, and it's
That's
like,
right.
Great, now I can make this thing even cooler or even more awesome, or even make people hurt more when you kill off characters that they love.
Exactly. Agreed.
Yeah, that's more good news, I guess, for me, is that I am planning to rewrite the first 3 books that I ever wrote and basically make them awesome and re-release the series, because I've got to write 7 more to close out the series, the second story arc. So I've spent the last week kind of ruminating over what I'm going to do, and I've figured out some stuff that's just gonna totally make it way more awesome than it was when I, because this is the first book I ever wrote. This was 6.5 years ago. So I've grown a lot as an author. So being able to basically hit the reset button and tell the same story or the same, emotional characters, journey that I want to tell, but with 37 books worth of experience under my belt, I'm super excited for that. And that's going to be the beginning of my next year. But things have, worked pretty well with figuring out how to put all the bits and pieces together so that it gets the same story, all the good stuff that the readers love, all the same emotional gut punches and the horrible, plot twists and all of that kind of stuff, but then making the story just like way better. So I'm excited for that.
Very cool. It's a great career, right? Writing is beautiful.
It is. It really is. Let's talk about today's topic. I love this idea that evil is a matter of perspective, in the sense that you really can make anybody the hero of the story and anybody the villain of the story. It's just all about who you start the stories from, from their perspective. You can literally take a serial killer and make them the protagonist, and the antagonist can be the most, law-abiding citizen or the best, most honorable cop in the city. But because you fucked with that perspective, now they're the bad guy. They're the antagonist. And so it's interesting. And this was a suggestion from your book, that it's all about perspective. Tell us a little bit about how it shows up.
Sure, because we got, so we have alien vampires. So we have gray aliens. We have human beings. We have a mysterious rebellion. And it's all about a matter of perspective. They all have their belief system that what they're doing is right. It's the best thing for them, and it's the best thing for their species. And they all have this belief system. They're doing the right thing, and all those belief systems are clashing. All right, and that's where all the war comes out. That's where all the suffering comes out. And I mean, they don't know that they're evil, or they don't think they're evil. They just think that they're the hero. They're a hero in their own mind because they're doing what they feel is right, and they take it to the nth degree.
That was kind of the thing that I played with in my Hero of Darkness series, in the sense that the demons, number one, they're not actually, demons like beings from hell. They're just like, you could basically call them aliens. You find out that they, came over from another world or dimension, or however you want to call it, and they made Earth their home. They look freaky and monstrous, so the primitive humans called them demons. But throughout the whole thing, it's every time I got a chance to play around with the demon characters, it was never like, oh, I'm a total monstrous son of a bitch. It's just like the idea in my head as I was writing it is just that my moral code is not the same as humans. So humans, society, we have sort of our spectrum of what we believe is acceptable, right? Maybe we have, say, from super dark gray to super light white. And then a creature that would be called a demon would have no light in it at all and like darker shades than black. So it's interesting to sort of play with that literally the only thing that separates the villain from the hero or the protagonist from the antagonist is that their moral compass is set to a slightly different, north than what it is, and their spectrum is a little bit different. So something that would be totally horrifying for us, like eating a baby. For a creature who is not a human, they see humans as food. Eating a baby is just like, it's squishy, tender, tasty. Obviously, I don't condone that, but it's kind of fun to play around with that. And so at one point, actually, one of the demons asked the hunter, "What are you getting on my case for?" The human is the one who's doing all the serial killing. I'm just minding my own business here. It was kind of fun to do that.
It's funny. Yeah, it is. It's great how you get to just play around with that aspect where it's like in this book, Sonos, and he's part of the alien vampires, but he doesn't like that they're in the book. The alien vampires have conspired with human beings, and he sees them as food. So he's against his own government and his own people and their philosophy in dealing and making this deal with all these humans. So he feels he's doing the right thing, but then his fellow alien vampires, they're hating him. He's the enemy to them now. And so in his mind, he's trying to free his people, and they don't see it the same way.
That's interesting. And is that, I guess you kind of have humans versus energy vampire or alien vampires. So it's pretty cut and dry who the bad guys are. Or do you also have like evil humans or human antagonists, I suppose?
You definitely have evil humans and human antagonists. Dr. Blum. So Dr. Blum is one of the elite humans that is part of this conspiracy between elite humans, alien vampires, and gray aliens to turn the human population into easily controlled zombies. So he's the doctor who's been tasked with creating a pharmaceutical that destroys the frontal lobe and gray matter in the brain. So human beings they're pretty much slaves at that point. So he's a main antagonist, including those elite humans. And then there's the rebellion. And the rebellion, when you read the book, you'll notice that you find out and more about alien vampires and gray aliens than you do actually about the rebellion, because it's shrouded in mystery. So we'll get to there in upcoming volumes.
Very
that goes.
I'm trying to think of what kind of questions Stevie would ask in this case. I guess we'll throw it out to the audience. If you guys have any questions about this topic or you have any comments, go ahead and share it. One thing, I've actually given this webinar masterclass presentation at literally every single convention I've attended, because it's so much fun to talk about it. And the one thing that I always do with the audience is I say, okay, I want you to think about your favorite hero, right? Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, someone will mention like Superman, because he's a classic, right? Sure. Or Captain America. And these ones are my favorite because they are the ones that are like paragons, but making them enemies or even evil is so easy. Like take Superman. He's a great guy, but then you look at something like the show or the movie Brightburn, where this kid who is born with Superman-like powers, I believe he's also born a psychopath. So it's like all of a sudden someone with a totally skewed sense of morality or a total lack of morality is given Superman-like powers, and they are literally evil.
Yes, like The Boys. Watch The Boys?
Loved The Boys. I love
it, man. Great second season. Phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's just insane how they keep showing that. Although instead of it being more straight up evil, it's just shitty human beings. And I think that's what I liked about The Boys more than like Brightburn, is that it's not like Homelander is a straight up psychopath, right? Yeah. But the rest of them, like A-Train is just a self-absorbed junkie, shitty human being that doesn't give a shit about anybody. And so all the stuff that he does, or, the Deep is scumbag, the kind of guy, that Me Too would get swept up, get rid of him. But he's not actually a villain by any stretch. We didn't get to see much about, what's his name? Is it Black Noir? Is that what they call him?
Black Noir, yeah.
Which is the dumbest code name ever.
Yeah.
But even like the Invisible Guy, he's just a peeping Tom pervert. He's nothing super evil, nothing super special, but he's just creepy. And so they make all of these heroes just like terrible human beings, and that's kind of a fun way to play with it, because it's showing, it's instead of it being black and white Superman versus Bizarro or Superman versus Zod, it's like just all of these just varying degrees of shitty people against each other.
That's right. And when I first watched that show, I had no idea. I knew nothing about it. So I was like complete surprised when all the supposed superheroes started doing all this evil stuff. I was like, wait a minute, this is great. Love the concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I had never read the comic either. So when I first started it, and you see in the opening scene, the guy gets his girlfriend, vaporized by the speeding superhero. Mm-hmm. It's like, what the shit is going on? And the rest of the show was just equally insane. Right. A question from the audience. Do you show both sides of the war and them trying to figure out what those aliens are doing?
Both sides of the war. Both sides of the war is in like World War III, because the story takes place right after World War III, or you mean like showing the alien vampires and then the rebellion part of the war?
Oh, no, so like your characters are both the humans and then there's an alien character.
Correct. And you get it, so it's multiple point of views. So you get into the heads of the alien vampires, you get into the heads of the gray aliens. You're understanding where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing, and their motives behind it as well.
Interesting. Yeah. I think David Weber does that kind of thing, and he does it really, really well, in the sense that you get to see both sides of the conflict, and there's always, the opinions are presented really, really balanced.
Yeah.
And yet, the bad guy, it's still very, very clear who you want to win and who you want to hate. The series Safehold did that amazingly. The bad guy of the whole thing, basically the evil Pope, he doesn't get killed until the end of the series. The whole time, you're just getting his perspective, and you're seeing obviously how he's just a worse and worse person, but you're getting his perspective on everything that's going on. And it's so contrasting with the, the more heroic good guy characters. Yeah. And so you really do see the whole picture. And it's so interesting, because no matter how much of a horrible human being this evil Pope is, you kind of understand why he's suppressing all of the people the way he is, because he's trying to maintain the status quo of his religion, and these people are going against it. So obviously it makes perfect sense for him to be, to send the Inquisition after them. And the Inquisition's evil, but you can understand how someone who has been, trained to think this way, the Inquisition is just an extension of the religion. And it's when that's done right, that it's really, really like complex and developed in a way that a lot of like single POV stories don't do. You only get the final confrontation where you find out the the bad guy's motives. But with this one, from the very beginning, and you kind of have to question, okay, what's my line? What's my limit?
Yeah. Fact. Same thing with the alien vampires too. It's people fall in love with those alien vampires. You can understand where they're coming from, with that psychology and why they're trying to do what they're doing. It's in their mind, they're doing the right thing. They're trying to, progress their species. They're trying to evolve their species in the best way possible that they know how. And then, they're alien vampires. They're surviving on human blood, so they got to be primal, And I can't wait to get into the other novels too, because you're going to see a lot more about like where they live and stuff, and how they live and how their society is built as well.
gonna be interesting. Well, you know what? Let's dive into the reading for the day. It seems like a good segue. So we are reading from The Rose.
Correct.
What part of the book is this? Pretty early in the book or later on?
Okay, so this is, I'd say, like less than a third into it. All right. So what's happened so far is, okay, so they're in an underground compound. All right. So underground complex is where the alien vampires are, where the gray aliens are. And above there is a reprogramming camp that's been set up. All right. So you have human beings that are being reprogrammed. They're locked in cages. And then you have the Chinese, Russian, and American military kind of overseeing them. And one of the military officers, his name is Cameron, he does not like what's going on. He's been fighting World War III for about 10 years. He's an explosive expert. Now the war is over, and he's taken orders from Russian and Chinese military. So he sneaks downstairs to pretty much try to blow the whole place up, is his philosophy. And he gets caught by an alien vampire, but he gets rescued by the main protagonist. His name is Phil. So he goes back up because he needs to tell his cohorts and, other soldiers, this is going on, underneath here, and we need to get out of here. We need to try to get these people to safety, blah, blah, blah. And he gets captured by his own soldiers, and they are questioning him. At this time, when they're questioning him, you have UFOs that come up out of the ground from underneath and start destroying the whole compound and everybody else around it. And at this point that we're reading from is like after that, those UFOs have destroyed everything that's there, and you only have a few soldiers that are left, including a genetically experimented on teenager, right? So he's about 12 years old, who is actually showing traits of being a vampire.
Okay.
All right, so he's the boy in there. So when you hear the boy, that's who that is. All right.
All right. Let's do it. Take it away, narrator.
Take it away. Give me 1 second. Take the glasses off. So, here we go. All right. Whew. Okay, so when Lau scuttled across the concrete debris, both Cam and Grimes are about to squeeze their triggers. If he hadn't identified himself, they would have unloaded. By the way, Lau is a Chinese soldier. Sorry, just had to say that. But go.
Makes sense. Admiral Lau.
He said, wriggling down the concrete.
Admiral Lau.
He repeated in a hurried, fearful tone. He'd mounted the concrete and scuttled across like a child chased by the town bully, then dropped face first to the ground, using his arms to soften his fall. Grimes raced over, crouched beside him.
Are you hurt?
Grimes asked. Lau shook his head, breathing hoarse.
No direct hits. I'm fine.
He snapped his head around. The ships outside descended with a quiet, humming spin.
They're coming,
Cam said. Lau turned around, noticed the boy sitting behind Cam.
They're going to sweep for survivors.
Grimes lifted Lau to his feet.
We're sitting ducks if we stay here,
Grimes said. He took up his AR-15.
Let's make a final stand. Kill as many as possible.
Cam shook his head.
We don't stand a chance. Who knows what monsters are coming out of that ship and what weaponry they have. We're soldiers. We stand and fight.
Cam dropped his head.
We're humans in an alien war. We get out of here and take this boy to safety.
Lau looked at Cam like he was out of his mind.
Go where?
He asked.
Who is that boy? Where did he come from? I thought they took all children downstairs. Who is this Cam answering?
Honestly,
yeah.
Yes,
Cam, yeah. Obviously, there's a lot more going on than you know, Admiral. There's a camp in Atlanta. We take him there. How?
Grimes interjected.
They've killed everyone who tried to run. We have no choice but to fight. The elevator.
Cam said.
We get downstairs and use the tunnels to get away.
Grimes stepped closer.
That elevator is more than likely destroyed. Who knows what's down there waiting?
He shook his head.
No, there's no way we can make it. But making a final stand is your answer? I'll take my chances with him in the tunnels.
Behind them, outside, ramps descended from the discs. Cam went to the elevator door, securing the 9mm behind his back, then pushed the door with all his strength, forcing it open until the doors slid apart. He used an AR-15 to secure the doors from closing. He eyed the cable, secured to the ceiling above him, and disappearing into the darkness below.
Cam?
Grimes said. Cam shot him a look.
Are you sure?
Cam looked beyond Lau and Grimes and stepped forward. Outside, descending the ramps, were large, pale brown, insect-looking creatures. Resembling 7 feet tall crickets, their tentacles thumped down the ramps, forming a single file line. Cam's jaw dropped.
Friggin' alien war.
He said, inciting stares from Lau and Grimes. He went to the boy whose head was leaning against the wall.
I'm not sure about anything anymore, except that if we stay up here...
He lifted the boy to his feet, stared into his eyes.
You'll have to climb down. I'll be right with you. Follow behind me.
Then turned back to his cohorts.
If we stay here, we are definitely dead, and so is this boy. Our best chance is in the tunnels.
He reached into the elevator shaft and took hold of the cable, gripped it tight and pulled, testing its strength, and turned back to Lau and Grimes.
You coming or not? If you're staying, slide the door closed.
Lau and Grimes looked at each other with uncertainty. They turned to the outside. One of those cricket-looking things plunged its front right tentacle into the chest of a Russian soldier, forcing the human to the ground. The cricket screeched. A loud call, and the other crickets started patrolling the perimeter. They locked eyes and nodded, joining Cam and the boy.
That's what I thought.
Cam said. He looked at the boy.
Follow close behind me. I know it's scary, but it won't take long. Hold the cable tight, wrap your ankles around it, and slide down slowly. If something happens, don't call out. Whisper, and one of us will help you. Understood?
The boy nodded.
Once we reach the elevator, drop down as lightly as possible.
The boy nodded again. Lau glared outside, and those oversized crickets approached the building.
If we're going to do it, we need to do it now.
Cam looked outside, seeing the same. Grimes was already on the cable when Cam turned back.
And he didn't want to come.
Cam shook his head, reached into the shaft, and grabbed the cable. He looked at Lau before descending.
Help him on.
Lau nodded, his eyes widened.
Go.
Cam took one last look at the boy, then slid down the cable. Lau helped the boy, who took the cable and slid down with ease, leaving Lau the last to enter.
Like descending into hell,
he said in a faint tone. He took the cable in his hands and pulled himself into the shaft, turning so his torso leaned against the cable, wrapped his legs around it. Using the cable as support, he leaned to the door, gripping the gun, holding the doors open. Took one final glance at the broken concrete, cocked his head to the right, eyes narrow. It seemed like the concrete was melted. He shook his head, pulled the gun from the door, and wrapped it around his shoulder as the door scraped closed. The shaft was in total darkness, although he could hear movement down the cable. He reached for the flashlight on his belt, bracing himself. The light flickered on, and he wedged it between his teeth, looking down. Grimes was already on top of the elevator, and Cam and the boy were just about there. He slid down.
Check the ceiling door.
Grimes said to Cam when Lau reached the elevator. Cam kneeled, ripped the elevator ceiling hatch.
Where's that air coming from?
Lau said. He looked at the others, the flashlight down in his hand. You feel that?
You feel that?
He lifted his hand. The wind grazed his fingers. He pointed the light towards the wall. Above their heads was a large shaft emitting forced air. He used the light to the other side where a second air tunnel was revealed, both tunnels over 7 feet high.
Where do they lead?
He whispered. Cam gave up the elevator door.
Perfect.
He said.
You know where it leads?
Grimes asked. Cam surveyed the holes, thinking.
Yeah, they're used to bringing air from the outside. There's openings all through the tunnels.
He turned to his comrades.
We can make it through to a safe distance and stay out of sight.
Cam noticed immediate relief grace their eyes. Cam smiled.
Told ya.
He said, then huffed.
Make a final stand.
He shook his head.
How long?
Grimes asked, ignoring Cam's antics.
Well, no matter what, we've got to move fast, and hopefully it's no more than a few hours.
He looked at the boy who stood with the men staring at Cam.
Why?
Lau asked.
Why a few hours?
Grimes added.
The bomb explodes an hour after sunrise. Bomb? What bomb? What are you talking about?
Cam put his finger to his lips.
No need to worry. We'll be at a safe distance by then.
Lau and Grimes shot each other a concerned stare.
Move fast,
Cam said.
Just in case the path is longer than expected.
He reached up, finding the shaft's end, and pulled himself up.
This isn't good,
Grimes said.
He's crazy,
Lau replied.
The boy next.
Cam reached down to the boy who took his wrist. He pulled the boy in with him. He looked at Lau and Grimes, still standing as if contemplating what they should do.
You coming or waiting for the bomb to explode? Are those things up there opening the elevator door? Which I'm sure they will.
Cam cocked his eyebrows and disappeared down the shaft.
Crazy like a fox, but...
Grimes said, reaching his fingers to the shaft to pull himself up.
He's been right so far.
Up he went, leaving Lao alone.
I'm a long way from home.
Lao whispered. He looked down, thinking of home, his family, not knowing anything about their whereabouts. He jumped when the elevator door thumped, jumped up and pulled himself in, then leaned against the wall and breathed, catching his breath. Another thump, the scrape of metal doors opening, took his 9mm from his leg holster and squeezed the gun between his palms. He heard screeching sounds reverberate in the air shaft. Looked back to his crew. Cam and the others had rounded a corner and were gone. Another screech.
What the hell are those things?
He moved his head back and forth.
I hope I never find out. Very good. I love that dramatic ending.
Right?
Creepy stuff.
Right. And he definitely does find out those cricket things, they're a species called the thorts. And we discover a little bit later on how they eat their food. And I'll just leave it like that. Pretty close.
Wait, those aren't the energy vampires?
No, they're not. They're another species. They're like, say, remember in the Phantom Menace, like the droid army. They're kind of like my version of that. But they're a different species of alien, and like that's their whole purpose. They're there for just to go on missions. They're military. They can protect themselves, and they kind of do like recon and stuff like that.
Interesting.
But then they got to eat, and that's when it gets kind of that's when the story flips a little bit over to a little bit of a horror element. Put it that way.
A lot of sci-fi really banks hard on the horror. I mean, the truth is that sci-fi is set in all kinds of just really, really horror-conducive places, like a spaceship with a leak, into the atmosphere, right? You've got running out of oxygen, you've got the vacuum of space, you've got darkness, you've got cold, like all these super classic horror elements, or, aliens. Aliens are just like as classic horror as any of those, horror monsters are. So you can have a lot of fun playing with that.
That's right. Fact. Bring them out. Bring them all out. That's what I said.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome. Well, you know what? As I told you beforehand, the show has, without Stevie at its heart, it's going to end a little bit earlier. But, why don't you tell our readers and listeners where they can find your books? And
yeah, you can find the books anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Keep going. It's out there. It's nationwide. But you can find me on pdalleva.com. Sign up for my newsletter. I love sending out newsletters. It's where I do most of my best work as far as like interacting and stuff, social media wise. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram and stuff, but I love doing my newsletter.
That's cool. I enjoy doing my newsletter too. I actually end up popping onto Psychology Today and just kind of scrolling through an article, through the list of articles until I find something that catches my attention. And I find that like the last one that I sent out a few days ago was about using gratitude to sort of get through trauma or, difficult life changes. How like just changing your attitude about something to something of gratitude can sort of put these things into context. And I like that because I'm always looking for that kind of inspiration. So I read through these articles and I find something that speaks to me and then share that. And I've found that it's always been really nice to be able to do that. So I like my email newsletter.
I do too. And when we're in a constant state of gratitude, we're manifesting and attracting things that we're grateful for. Because human beings, we get addicted to behavior patterns and emotions, right? So if we're in a constant state of gratitude, that's good. We're constantly bringing in things that we're grateful for. Law of attraction comes into effect. So it's great. It's a better way to be.
Yeah, Stevie would have loved having you. He's a super law of attraction guy.
Gotcha. Stevie, I love you. Well, I'll talk to you next time. But feel better.
For sure. Now, this is a question that we ask all of our guests at the end of the show. We totally surprise them with it so we can get their raw, unfiltered answer. And the question is, what do you think are 2 vital habits or traits for a successful human being? Not a successful author, but a successful person.
Successful person? Like a successful human being, or say just a successful person?
Just a successful human being.
Successful human being. Let's see. Successful human being. Compassion.
Love it.
And awareness.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah. Awareness and, awareness / self-awareness.
100%. You got to, when you're self-aware, you can control your emotions, you can control your state, you can make better choices, you can manifest and make all your dreams come true. You're in control. There's There's a great TED talk for anybody who's listening who wants to check it out. It's called, the title is "You Are Not at the Mercy of Your Emotions." And what it is, it's a 2-decade-long study where their whole purpose was to find where emotions come from in the brain, and all their evidence was overwhelming that emotions are not built in; they're just built. Emotions are a prediction your mind is making in the moment based on past experience, and sometimes our past experiences had it wrong. We saw something, or somebody programmed us, or it was a certain way, and we kind of see things in a different light, and we validate our belief system. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, good stuff, right?
That's really cool. Well, that's an awesome answer. Thank you so much for joining me. I would say
you're welcome.
Get back on sometime in the future.
Definitely. I loved it. I had a great time. Thank you.
Very cool. And for those of you who will be joining us on Monday night for Deranged and Questing, oh, yes, our heroes are going to be challenging the Red Goblin tribe for supremacy in the Sun Gap / Trash Chasm. But if you watched till the end of the last episode, you know that some really weird shit happened with Jin, and I have no idea, honestly, how that's going to shake out. So it's going to be super interesting. And Grak is going to kill some serious goblins. So it's going to be fun. Join us Monday night at 6 o'clock Pacific time on Twitch for some more Deranged and Questing fun. And we will see you right back here next Thursday night. Stevie and myself, have a good night. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye. Thank you.